Ian, another Open Line Friday. I feel like you've been on every other month this whole year for 2023 with Open Line Friday. But no, seriously, it's been good to have you on Open Line Friday because you bring a wealth of knowledge. I just can't remember what all you've done so far. I know that you did the engineering standards
Yep, you can't
and
remember what my knowledge is. I can't either. So
no, you're making it difficult for me, man. But this time it's
yeah,
something new. By the way, my name is Josh Benoit. I'm in the digital department here at EPLAN in the US. I work out of Houston. With me is Ian Underhill. He's one of our consultants that has been on quite a few times for Open Line Friday. A great wealth of knowledge here in the US. You're out of our Detroit office, correct?
yep, Farmington Hills, Michigan.
Well, for this Open Line Friday, there's been so many changes in Platform 2024 from the previous version of Platform 2023 that we've actually had to talk about it for a few months now. Every Open Line Friday, it seems like, well, we're talking about, the block properties are harness changed. And now this is something new, a new change or an enhancement to Platform 2024 with 3D electrical control panel design that they've outdone themselves, I would almost say, in how much it's changed and the usability of this. Because everything that we do, we want to look at it from a UI standpoint, that we want the user to be able to go through and seamlessly use our software and it not be a burden. So every time we have a platform update, it's better than what we had before. But I feel like Platform 2024 has kind of shot through the roof. I don't know about you, Ian.
Yeah, I mean it's it's always incremental updates. It always just gets better. You know, the base products is so good anyway. What it gives you as an engineer is so good anyway. But they just make just enough tweaks to make it worth that upgrade and the benefits. I mean, there's a few for the Pro panel specifically, but the benefits that go across the platform as a whole always make it worth a move. That's for sure.
And with 3D design, I feel like that the things that they changed on this is all about usability
Hmm.
from a UI perspective, or I guess it's not even UI, it's UX, right? From a user experience. And I know that we'll get into those in a second, but I don't know what they could do to improve it in Platform 2025. We're not even in 2024 yet, and people are just blown away by what we've been able to do. So whatever they're doing for the next platform next year, I don't know how it could get better, but I'm sure that it will.
Oh, it is. Yeah, I've the 2025 alpha is started already. Those guys never stop. You know, the
Right.
moment they've released the current version, they're on to the next bunch of things. So I'm sure we'll find what those enhancements are in the long term. But early
Well,
next year, we'll be playing around with beta
for
and
us,
alpha copies.
let's start talking about the future present because
Yeah.
it's in the
Okay.
future being 2024, but it's present because it's available now in the 3D electrical control panel design. I know that there are enhancements, especially whenever we use the cube now. The cube is like
Yeah.
a new thing that was brought on, and I know that you're going to show us how to use that.
Absolutely. Yeah. This is a big thing for me personally in terms of usability. I do use a space mouse a lot, which helps, but it just makes the navigation and the manipulation of the model really, really easy, even for those people who don't have a space mouse. Hopefully, you can see my screen. This is actually just a little control, little panel with a pneumatics manifold on it. Um, Typically, we manipulate the model around. In this case, I'm using my space mouse, or we'd use with a mouse to manipulate, and it tends to be a little bit difficult if you're trying to quickly move it around. So what they've given us is this cube in the corner that can quickly manipulate the model to some fixed viewpoints. So the home one, you see the home button, that will turn us to our southeast That is configurable, so you can make your home position whatever you'd like. And then where we see the cube, for a start off, we see the surfaces are actually colored. So if we look, we can see actually we've got a green, red, and a blue surface that aligns up with our icon showing the axes. And if you click on a surface, you'll instantly get that. No, quickly move from surface to surface. You can use the arrows on the side of the box to move in 90-degree increments. Again, always going back to home should you want to. And you can even use the bar that makes at the side of the cube as well to get a 45-degree increment, as you see there. So really, really quickly to ease the change of view. I mean, so much so, I used to have a lot of the icons to allow me to quickly move around in the quick access bar. That's completely unnecessary anymore. It's so easy to quickly maneuver around.
I think one of the things that is good for me is the fact that you have the home button, because we're so conditioned in pretty much every program that we use, even on our computer, that you hit the home bar and you go right back to the start. To be able to have that and go right back to the beginning, because you can get confused. You can get yourself turned around in here. You hit the home button, you're right back at start, and then you can manipulate to go back where you were.
Absolutely. It's particularly useful. This is fairly obvious. If you're the wrong side of this, you just got a blank, so it's fairly obvious where you are.
Right.
But when you're manipulating, particularly in control enclosures, where you've turned off maybe the doors, so you just got the base control enclosure, and you're trying to place extra mounting rails and that sort of features that you can have, or adding enclosure lamps where you're adding them in the roof of the enclosure. So it's very easy to get disoriented and as you say, quickly going back into the home and then be able to rotate around from that. It is so much so makes it so much easier.
It reminds me of a video game almost, and I'm gonna try to say this as easily as possible. If you remember playing Super Mario Brothers, the original version, and on level 8, you had to go through the castle, but you had to go through the right doors of the castle. If not, it would bring you back to a certain place, and then you would get disoriented. You didn't know if you were in the right spot or where to go from there. If you had the home button, it would bring you back to the beginning of that level completely, and it would make it a lot easier. But whenever you're playing a video game, you're scampering around, you're all over the place, and you get disoriented. To have that home button brings you right back to the start, especially on the big panels.
Yeah, yeah. It for me definitely that's the one where you've got mounting panels where you've got maybe a full enclosure. This fairly easy, but once you start turning off some of the items and you're looking maybe at just the let's get rid of some of the enclosures parts, for example. Let's get rid of the door, the roof plate. Now, if when you're trying to manipulate it to without a 3D mouse, particularly, so it's very easy for me with a 3D mouse to move it around. But when you're trying to place these items, if you're particularly if you've got just a standard mouse to use with this, you're sort of a bit lost. Well, where's it gone? Where am I? Quickly back to the home. Okay, right. So and be able to use these to quickly manipulate the image, I think is golden for sure. And as you see, I didn't mention it, even by clicking the corner of where the 3 axes come together in the box,
Right.
then you can get that angle, which you can see here. Being able to quickly manipulate to get underneath the top bar of the enclosure to place maybe this limit switch or maybe the lamp. That can be quite difficult when you're trying to do it with just the old mouse style movements. Rotate the viewing angle command. So I think it's a simple thing, but and it's common to a lot of other 3D programs, though, for the guys that maybe also do mechanical work.
Right.
This is a fairly common tool, so it aids people come into EPLAN and understanding, because they're not going to learn something new. They've got to work how to manipulate the image. They can see this and they'll be very familiar with it because it's similar from a lot of other 3D tools.
It's not the only upgrade either. The other upgrade is that we have to talk about is the one that Sean Mulheron talks about all the time, the mind the gap. He always talks about mind the gap. And you being from the UK, I guess that's something that you are pretty familiar with too, right?
Yep, it's from being on the tube, mind the gap when the train's coming in. It's like the gap between the actual carriage and the platform. So that's where it comes from. We're going to just pick these items. It's an easy example. So we've got a number of motor circuit protectors here, and maybe you want to bring them all nicely together. So I can select them as a group. Then I go to the edit menu and then line up without gaps, which is this command here. And then you pick which item is the fixed one, which way you want to move towards. So I'm going to pick this one. You see there, pulls up everything. That one stays fixed and everything else removes the gaps between that and the other ones. If I just to quickly demonstrate, if I did the reverse, obviously, line up without gaps, pick the one on the right-hand side, then they all go that way.
That's got to be a really quick fix for some of these companies that put a lot into their panels. Because I had a conversation with someone recently that they said we pack a punch with our panels. We put a lot of stuff in there. So if you have all of the gaps, that this takes it out really quickly, then you're able to move through and do your design so much faster, don't you?
Yeah, it's when you're laying out panels, you have an idea in your head in terms of the way you're laying out. Typically, you're going to try and keep the higher voltages away from the lower voltages, particularly AC voltages away from maybe DC voltages. So in your head, you have an idea and you're throwing items in. But as the design develops, you can get blindsided by, another component you didn't expect for. There's a change engineering wise. So sometimes you end up having to almost shuffle the parts around. So your nice little layout gets shuffled. But, as you're moving them around, to be able to go back and reduce those gaps, when you've put them first, you line them all nicely up, and then someone comes up, spoils your party, and you've got to add some things. So you've got to squeeze a gap apart, then put one in, and then bring them back together again. This makes it easier. You just put the order you want and click the button, and the gaps go away. So it just makes something that could be fairly time consuming, doing that shuffling around. It as you can see, it's really easy. Just get them in the right order and move your gaps. Also, when you've got a panel that's complete, you maybe need to add some extra component, and you've got to move them around to add some space. You've allowed 20% free space, but now you've got to use that space. How can you do it? How can you find enough space for a maybe a larger component that you've got to place? So yeah, it's got a multitude of times where it could be a useful tool.
And whenever you're adding new components, that means extra weight inside the panel.
Yes.
And so this kind of leads perfectly into our third topic, the changes in Platform 2024. Yeah, I know. Man, that's so good. I am so good.
Almost like we're professional, eh?
Almost. 3 more years, buddy.
3 more. So yeah, the one of the item that's new is the ability to calculate the weight of an individual enclosure. So in the past, we've had to do it by generating a report. So a summarized parts list or a parts list type report. And then we've had to add calculations to that report to get the weight. Obviously, you creating a report just for that one piece of information, you know, is an extra report you wouldn't necessarily normally need. You don't necessarily normally require it in the data you're going to give to your customer or to your shop to build from. We certainly don't do that with a thermal side of things. So they've added a similar technique that we will do for generating the thermal calculations to get the total heat within a panel. They've used the same technique to add it in terms of the panel itself. Let's quickly go back and show you everything we've got in my panel here. Let's show everything. So here's my panel. It's actually the EPLAN Engineering Standard Stacker System panel. For those you might recognize it. Shimming. So just as we do with the thermal calculations, it's part of the enclosure. So we calculate the thermal power dissipation on an individual panel. So if you've got multiple enclosures that are bayed together, it looks at what's mounted in each of those individual enclosures. And it's part of the reports section, so it's in the same area as well. So if we go to the generate reports pull down here, you'll see we've got the power dissipation I mentioned earlier, and now we've got this additional one for calculate the total enclosure weight. So if I select that, it will do in one shot, it will do all the enclosures that you have, not just the one you're selected. It'll do all the enclosures in the whole of the project. To go and find out the information, then we go to the enclosure itself and go to the properties, and you may have to add this property so you can see it. But you see it, we've got this new property, total weight, and there's the calculation. And it just uses the information from the parts database, which should already be there in most cases. So if we look at any particular part, let's have a look at this particular part. We find here the weight as supplied by our friends at Allen Bradley or Rockwell is 1.47 kilograms. So you'll find that data is very common for most of your parts. Makes this really easy. It will check to see if there are any components that are missing weight. So if you can run a check run to make sure everything's included.
So whenever you see this, the amount of weight for this whole panel, what is that used for? Is this purely for shipping, or is it? I mean, I honestly don't know how you would use this except whenever you're trying to transport it.
I mean, that obviously that's the one that's the most obvious. That, you know, how can I, when I'm getting this panel from wherever it's being built to wherever it's going, logically that's important to know how heavy it is for shipping. But also when it comes to mounting it, what structure is it going to be mounted on? You know, if it's too heavy for the structure, that if you're going to put it in a mezzanine level, so the panel's away from the ground, maybe, or you're mounting it on a framework for your machine, that frame has got to be capable of handling the weight. So yeah, there's a few different areas, particularly when it comes to if you've got a bayed cabinet. So if you use the Wrestler cabinets like that, you may have 3 or 4 cabinets grouped together. Then it's important to know where the weight is to have an idea where the center of gravity is. You know, if you've got
distribution.
Yeah. I mean, if you've got all 4 cabinets and they're all coming in with 10 pounds of each or 10 kilograms of each other, whatever, weight wise, it's fairly easy to understand. Yeah, the weight's going to be roughly center. That's good enough, probably.
Right.
But if you've got some really heavy components like buzz bars and big contactors in one, and just some light control PLCs and terminals and stuff in the other, then it's not, it's not going to be central. So you need to be aware of that. You might need to do more of an in-depth analysis to work out where that center of gravity is, but it certainly gives you a ballpark to know whether you need to start worrying about it or not. You know.
Man, I love these new additions. Like I said, the enhancements are great, and I'm glad that you're already looking at 2025 and the alpha. I don't know if you want to risk anything and tell us, like,
I
give
don't.
us any hints.
No, I'm not in the. I'm not in a position of knowledge. I've seen emails go around about the version 2025 when I'm talking some other stuff to the developer team that we've got. Our team of developers does not only the work on the project products themselves, but they do additional APIs for third-party companies, for example. So there's I know a few of those guys from my work with them on a couple of different projects. So yeah, I know the alpha version is out because they're already talking about what they're doing and how that's going to impact stuff. So
Well, I feel like what's going to happen is whenever we do get more info about 2025, that I'm going to have to come to you and have you on for another Open Line Friday if you're good with it.
oh, anytime I can get to sit and chat. You know me, can't stop me talking once you get me going.
Well, I hope you have a great holiday, and thanks so much, Ian. Ian Underhill, our consultant. Platform 2024, the enhancements from the 3D electrical control panel design, they're really great, and you're always a lot of information for us, and great information at that. So I appreciate it.
Anytime, Josh. Have a great holiday yourself, man.